So let's talk about the real number system. You guys should already know what whole numbers, integers, and rational numbers are. The two new things that we're talking about this year are real numbers and irrational numbers. So let's go ahead and start off with whole numbers. So we know what whole numbers are, and we should know what natural numbers are. So natural numbers are known as your counting numbers. So things you can count on your hands, like 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So our whole numbers, our natural numbers, and that includes 0, okay? So, for example, 0, 5, 25, 15, so on and so forth, okay? Now let's move up to our next spot. We know what integers are as well. Integers are our whole numbers. I'm gonna put number, not hashtag, for numbers so I can save space. So whole numbers and their opposites. So what does that mean? If we're talking about 1, the opposite of 1 is going to be -1. So integers are your positive and negative numbers. So we have 1, -1, 2, we can put -5 in there, and that should be good, okay? Now our next set is our rational numbers. So our rational numbers are all of our numbers that we talked about before, so our whole and our integers, and this includes fractions, decimals, and percents. So pretty much all numbers that we're going to talk about. And we're going to include fractions, decimals, percents, every number that we talk about. Also perfect squares, but we'll talk more about that in class. So rational numbers can be our fractions. It can be our percents. It can be our decimals, right? It can also be our perfect squares. So I'm just gonna write square root of 25, but we'll talk more about that later, okay? Now, on the other side of rational numbers, we have irrational numbers. So these are numbers that we cannot write as fractions, okay? Okay, so some numbers that we can't write as fractions. Let's see, the square root of 12, because that's not a perfect square, so we can't write that as a fraction. Pi, y'all know what pi is, right? It goes on forever and ever and ever, so we can't write that as a fraction as well. Square root of 19. And let's do square root of 21, okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a square root, but I just want y'all to see that irrational numbers cannot be written as fractions. It cannot be written as terminating decimals, so decimals that end. These numbers go on forever and ever and ever, right? It can be like 0.1256, so on and so forth. It's non-terminating, right? So it's irrational. So all of these numbers, whole numbers, integers, rational numbers, and irrational numbers, put those together and you get your real number system. So our real numbers are all numbers, including rational and irrational. Okay, so now that we have our Venn diagrams filled out, we should be able to answer these questions below, okay? So we're either gonna write all or not all in the blanks, okay? So let's look at A. Whole numbers are integers. Are all whole numbers integers? Yes, based on our Venn diagram, if you look at integers, because whole numbers is below it, that means it's included, okay? So all whole numbers are integers. Are all or not all whole numbers rational numbers? So B, all whole numbers are rational numbers. How about C? Are all or not all integers rational numbers? Based on your Venn diagram, let's look at integers. Is that included in rational numbers? Yes. So all integers are rational numbers. How about D? Are all integers whole numbers? Nope, not all of them, because we have positive and negatives for integers, right? So you cannot have a negative whole number. So not all integers are whole numbers. How about E? Are all rational numbers integers? Not all, right? Because fractions are included in our rational numbers. So not all. F, are all rational numbers whole numbers? Once again, not all rational numbers are whole numbers, because that includes fractions, decimals, percents, everything. So not all of them are whole numbers. G, are all irrational numbers real numbers? They are, because our real numbers include rational and irrational. And H, rational numbers are not irrational numbers. Take a look at how we have two separate Venn diagrams here, right? All of our rational numbers are over here on this side, and irrational is over here, okay? So, all rational numbers are not irrational. Those are two separate categories. All right, so make sure you keep this paper, bring it back to class, because we're going to glue it into our notebook.